Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. Tips to help taxpayers decide how and when to file an amended return. But first, it's not easy these days. Even if your ship comes in, the IRS is waiting to unload it. If you do keep any of your money, you need to spend it fast to avoid the out-of-control inflation. The once valued shipload soon being worth no more than a rubber ducky with a tube of Halloween face paint stuck to its back. Another government tax caused by the mismanagement of the money supply. It can be difficult even to spend the money fast before it becomes worthless because everyone else's ships, the ones carrying all the stuff we want to buy, are stuck in the harbor arguing over supply chain issues. So even if we end up with piles of money, we may be stuck with only that tube of Halloween face paint. You even need tax with the Halloween face paint. What? I thought the paint stayed on your face by itself. COVID Tax Tip 2021-157, October 25th, 2021. After filing their tax return, taxpayers may find they made an error or forgot to enter something on it. So in other words, if you're in a situation, you file the tax return, already sent it in, then discover there's a problem, there's some type of error on it. What do I do at that point in time? The traditional thought would be, well, I need to fix it. I need to amend it. So that would mean you'd need to file a 1040X, which is the return for an amended return. But the question is, do I really need to do the amended return? Because to do the amended return can be somewhat complicated. You might need other software in order to process the amended return or work with a tax professional. Most people haven't filed a 1040X, so it's kind of a new experience to do that. They've recently, I believe, have an online version that you can actually send it in electronically in a similar fashion as most people do with their normal forms 1040, but you used to, quite recently, actually have to print out the information and send it in. So it can be somewhat of a tedious process. And if you're in a situation where you don't really need to amend it, you could actually slow up the IRS and possibly confuse the IRS, which could make the process of possibly issuing the refund and so on a little bit longer of a process. Plus, this year, there were a couple things that the law changed on, including the unemployment compensation that the law changed on, and the IRS is recommending whether or not you should amend it or not in those types of instances. So that's going to be the general question here. So the IRS strongly recommends taxpayers use the interactive tax assistant. Should I file an amended return? There's a link to that here to help determine if they should correct an error or make any other changes to the tax return they already filed. Here are some common reasons people may need to file an amended return. Entering income incorrectly. So clearly the income, it's an income tax. Income's the first kind of part of the 1040 where you actually put the numbers in place. If your income is incorrect, your tax calculation will then be incorrect most likely. So not claiming credits for which they're eligible. This is probably one of the more common kind of issues here because you know, the credits can be somewhat complex. The income, on the income side, you possibly have the documentations if you have a basic return like the W-2s and so on, although there could be many situations where it gets much more complex than that. The credits are situations where you might miss a credit. You might not have the information that's on the credit, later find out you're eligible for it, and then think, hey, I need to amend the return in that instance. Claiming deductions incorrectly. Obviously, if there's a miscalculation of the deductions, that's going to result in a miscalculation generally of the taxes. So the IRS may correct math or clerical errors on a return and may accept returns without certain required forms or schedules. So if your error basically says, hey, there's a mathematical error on it, and or it has a required schedule like a Schedule B, for example, which is interest and dividends, but you already have that information on the first form of the 1040 in terms of the total. So if you miss that schedule, do you really need to amend the entire return in order to pick that up? Possibly not. And note that the IRS will generally be able to automatically pick up certain things. So if it's a mathematical error, the IRS, by processing it through their system, will probably pick up the mathematical error. And even if it has an impact on your refund and so on, they may be able to pick that up on their end, make the adjustment for you, and it doesn't even take an audit really to do that. They can kind of do that with an automated system, with their computer system. Even some of the data input stuff these days, they can pick up quite readily. So if you made an error just with the data input for something like a W-2, well, they clearly have the W-2, So it's likely that they might take care of that on their side because they're going to be comparing the data that they have, the W-2 they got from your employer, to what you put on the 1040. And if those two things don't match, then they're probably going to try to send you a letter and say, hey, we've made an adjustment. Do you accept the adjustment or something like that? It's likely that that would happen. However, if you make an income error on something that's not reported and you're supposed to report income but you didn't, possibly like business income, then the IRS doesn't have the form like a W-2 to check it out against. Same with when we talk about the credits, it's possible that the credits then are based on things that the IRS doesn't have documentation on, and therefore they're more likely to be things that the IRS isn't able to kind of just pick up on their side by having the information that they have. So that's the general idea. So then the question is, well, can I wait and see should I wait and see if the IRS is going to pick up the mathematical error or the fact that I miskeyed something that they have information on, like the W-2 or something like that, or should I take action and file the amended return, even though that can actually slow up the IRS, in some instances. So in these instances, there's no need for the taxpayer to amend the return. So they say you don't need to if it's just a mathematical error generally, because they'll be able to take that out just automatically with their computer system. Taxpayers should also wait if they expect a refund. They need to allow time for their original tax return to be processed before filing an amended return. So if you're going to get a refund, they're basically saying you're going to confuse them possibly if you send in the amended return before they process the original return. So they're saying wait for the refund here. Now, if you wait for the refund and it was kind of an error in that they have the documentation for, like a W-2 miskey or something like that, and they have it, then maybe they'll correct that automatically on their end and issue the corrected amount when they give it to you. And if you wait for them to respond in that case, there's kind of a trade-off. You can wait for them to respond and you can say, did they fix it? If they did, then you could accept whatever they fixed and you can go forward from there, and you can determine if they did not fix it and then take action and determine whether or not you then need to make the amended return at that point in time. The downside to that is, of course, that the longer you wait, if there's a tax detriment, you're gonna owe money in some way, shape, or form. It could cause penalties and interest. But if you're getting a refund and you don't owe money, you would think that it's not going to be in that situation possibly where you got this big issue of waiting longer, what's going to cause you more interest and so on. So the IRS is automatically refunding money to eligible people who filed their tax return reporting unemployment compensation before changes made by the American Rescue Plan. So if it's an unemployment situation, then meaning usually before 2020, you had to record unemployment on the tax return as income and pay taxes on it. And then they made some exceptions to it in 2020, but they made that late. So you may have filed the tax return under the old rules and pay taxes on unemployment, which under the new rules you don't have to do. And then the question is, well, do I have to fix that? For the most part, they said no. They're gonna fix that automatically on their side. So you want to see if they do indeed do that, and then if they do it properly. They had a few kind of exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, they said they're going to be able to fix that on their end. So I would think that mainly you would wait to see what they do and see if they do indeed fix it properly. And if they don't, then you could think about the amended return at that point. So it may take the agency more than 21 days to issue refunds more than 2020 tax returns that require review, including incorrect recovery, rebate credit amounts, or returns that use 2019 income to figure the earned income tax credit and additional child tax credit. So the IRS is having some issues with these new changes that happened in 2020. So those who do need to amend their tax return, there's a link to that here, might have questions about how to do so. Here are some things they should know. Taxpayers. So if you have to amend the tax return, it can be somewhat of a tedious process to do the amendment because most people haven't filed a 1040X before, and you might need software in order to do it. You used to have to file it manually. They changed that recently, so if it's a recent return, you might have the electronic filing option, but even that's kind of a new thing, so it might have some glitches these days until people get used to it. So in any case, so the taxpayers may now use tax software to file an electronic Form 1040X. So the amended return is called a 1040X. At this time, only tax year 2019 and 2020 Forms 1040 and 1040 SR returns can be amended electronically, and only if the original 2019 or 2020 tax return was also filed electronically. So it's a new thing. It's kind of exciting, actually, that you can do it electronically now. So who cannot or choose not to file their 1040 electronically should complete a paper Form 1040. So you could do the 1040 by paper, mail a paper 1040 to the IRS address listed in the form's instructions under where to file. Taxpayers filing Form 1040X in response to an IRS notice should mail it to the IRS address indicated on the notice. So note that the actual 1040X, what you're going to end up doing in essence is having a summary of what was on the original return and then the changes after the change has been made. You can realize that in order to make that 1040, you'll need software, or you'll need to run the tax returns using the two different numbering systems so that you could do the side-by-side kind of comparison with it and provide any of the supporting documentation to show that. So once again, it's a little bit of a tedious process to do that, because you have to kind of show, here's where I was before, here's my amended process, and to do that, you in essence have to run two returns. Software would be quite useful to help you to fix that. So you should attach copies of any forms or schedules affected by the change. Need to file a separate Form 1040X for each tax year. So if you're doing amending 2 years, then you got to do two 1040s. When mailing amended returns to the IRS, place each tax return in a separate envelope and enter the year or the original return being amended at the top of the Form 1040. So you're trying not to confuse the IRS. So you generally want to put the two amended returns in second envelopes. That helps not to confuse them. They could then take that envelope and send it to the correct department based on the year and so on. Should pay additional tax owed as soon as possible to limit interest and penalty charges. So if you owe money, if there's a change and you owe money, you're trying to take action quickly in that instance so that you can lower the amount of interest and penalties, the interest of penalties accruing upward as time passes. So must file Form 1040X to claim a refund within 3 years from the date they timely filed their original tax return, or within 2 years from the date they pay tax, whichever is later. So you have that statute of limitations. So if you're looking for like if it's a refund situation in particular, and you want to make sure that you file it timely, you want to take care of it, you want to fix it within the statute of limitations before the time expires on it generally. Can track status of an amended return 3 weeks after mailing using the Where's My Amended Return tool. More information can be found at the links below. Topic number 308, Amended Returns, Form 1040X, Frequently Asked Questions. There's links to those here. There'll be a link to this in the description.